Good evening, and thanks for spending some time with us here tonight. Amid the uncertainties of the past year, you in our audience, you in our public, and you in Windsor, Essex have stood beside us. And despite so many challenges, the staff at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society have been there for the animals every single day, and all because of you. We recently received a gift from a generous Windsorite by the name of Mary Watts. Sadly, Mary passed away back in April, but Mary was a passionate individual, and she cared about giving to others less fortunate, and her legacy will live on in the many, many lives that her gifts are going to touch. So when you're planning your will, please consider a gift like Mary's to help your love of animals lived on. My name is Arms Boomenlag. I'm the Director of Development at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. Tonight, we're asking you about thinking about planning a gift in your will. And you may be saying to yourself, well, you know what? That seems a bit daunting. So tonight, right here on Facebook Live, we're hosting a session where you can have all of your legacy giving questions answered with industry leaders right here in Windsor and Essex County. We've assembled a few gentlemen who are well known within Windsor, Essex, people that we trust and people we hope that you'll find some takeaway bits of knowledge on what you can do to help us continue to do what we do at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. And we'll be welcoming them to the live stream in the next couple of minutes. But we've got lots of ground to cover tonight and some stories to tell you as well about how your donations, how your gifts impact the Windsor Essex County Humane Society as an organization. And one of the things that we wanted to share with you is how we're doing what we're doing and how we continue to do what we do. And that all comes through major gifts like legacy planning and those planning to do that through charitable giving. So we've got a couple of things to cover tonight. First of all, we're going to talk about why the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the impact and how you can leave a legacy. And then we'll welcome Josh Lane from Kaspardloff and Associates, talking about the financial benefits, not only for you, but your estate. And then we'll talk to Ryan Soltz from Soltz Law about legal considerations. And we'll have more information for you if you'd like to pursue this and have a discussion with myself and the staff at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society about how you can truly change lives here locally. And then we'll open up the floor digitally for a question and answer period and get to some of the emails that have come in over the last couple of weeks. Today's speakers, of course, I'll be moderating the discussion. Josh Lane and Ryan Soltz will be joining me in just a few moments. So, through your life, you show your love for animals. We've got quite a following on social media and lots of supporters at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. But have you thought about after you're gone? What happens to that compassion that's going to live on in the lives that you've touched? But you can continue to save lives long after you've left this world by leaving a legacy to the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. So a legacy gift, again, ensures a future for lost, abandoned, injured, and mistreated animals right here in Windsor Essex. It's a lasting gift for you in the future of our community. So why the Windsor Essex County Humane Society? Well, honestly, we're doing some meaningful work for our community's animals and the people that continue to provide the service and care to those animals in need. We cannot help our animals without your support because we rely on public and corporate donations and fundraising campaigns to support our humane operations. And we talk about this often from a lens of what's possible for the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. And I can sit here before we bring on our guests and talk about all the reasons why you should be considering making a donation to us. But we like to refer to the 3 Ps at the Windsor Essex County Humane Society: the pets we serve, with the people that provide the care, and the passion that follows through in the work that they do on a daily basis. So we wanted to show you some of the work we've been doing over the last 6 to 7 months. And we'll start with those pets. Quite often in the news, we've been talking a little bit about all the dogs that we've been bringing in from Texas and shelters in the southern United States, but we've also brought in animals that are looking for forever homes from Canada, including Manitoba. And they've really impacted folks here locally. Take a watch.
Well, we've seen him on the internet, on the website, and we fell in love with him. He's everything that we wanted in a dog. We lost our dog, but we also got from the Humane Society in August, and my anxiety was really bad. I was having panic attacks like almost every day. And then I needed a dog for support. So we got him, and he's helped me. I've barely had any panic attacks. He pushes me to go outside, to do things. I had suffered with depression really bad, so she helped me with that. He clearly helps with that because he's always got his tongue hanging out and laughing, and you can't be upset. You can't really be upset when you're around him because he just brings out the good in you.
And it's about that connection that we make with not only the public, but making pets feel at home in their new homes here locally. And it really is about the people who provide that care. Our staff are continuing to exceed what we like to think is a connection with not only the pets, but the people who adopt those pets. And they go above and beyond. But we can't do it without your support. And like your legacy gifts, they can really make a difference in the care that we provide. Take a look at this.
I started my journey here when I was here for placement during school. So I had the opportunity to do my placement over at the Humane Society Spay and Neuter Clinic, where I definitely got an amazing hands-on experience in terms of just everyday surgery protocols and things like that. And then after school, I was offered a job here, and I started getting more hands-on work, especially on the shelter side of things. And I really fell in love with my job here. A little kitten came in that had come in really awful condition. He was very thin and quite lethargic when he first came in, and the thing that stood out to us the most was that his left hind leg was partially missing. So from the knee down, it just wasn't there. So having been the one to take the x-rays on this kitten, it really caught my eye to see something so unique in shelter, and this little guy really needed some help. So seeing that at the shelter he wasn't interested in having any food, it was sort of a 50-50 as to whether we could get him to eat and whether we could get his energy up enough so that we could get him the medical attention he needed and move on with his care. So at first the plan was just to take him over the weekend to make sure that he got some food in him and the supplementary medical care that he would need. We were just keeping him at home to make sure that he would get big and strong and that he would heal up fine from there. So that being said, at this point, he's an amazing little guy. He's got plenty of energy, plenty of spunk. Every day at 5 a.m. I wake up with him yelling at me because he wants some more food. And we were able to give him the opportunity to have a home and have someone to love them and care for them. And that, for me, is one of the best parts of working here.
As you can see, your direct impact from your donations, your bequests in your will, and your legacy planning does have an effect on the staff that we bring in and the services that we provide as well to animals like Nico in need. And it's not just bringing animals in need to the shelter and getting families to come to the shelter and utilizing our adoption services or some of our wellness clinics that we launched this year. It's also about going where the community needs us. One of the biggest initiatives our executive director, Melanie Coulter, has put forth this year is getting out into the community and helping families who have been affected by COVID-19 financially. That's why we've launched a number of drive-through microchip clinics that have helped folks really understand the importance of microchipping their pet and how we can continue to serve Windsor-Essex County by getting out of the shelter and in the community.
Thank you. And so the cars will be coming one on either side. So as you see cars coming, you can kind of skip ahead a couple.
Well, I was taking her out on Sunday night to do her business, and it was dark out, and the fireworks started, and she bolted. She was gone faster than I could think. And right from there on, for 39 hours straight, I walked up and down streets trying to find her. The other night, the lady came to my door, and she says, "I think I have my dog, your dog, in my garage. She won't come out." And I says, "Yeah, she's scared of loud noises." So I followed her to her house. Yeah, that was her, and it was a really great reunion. And I said, now that I got her back, I'm getting her microchipped. That's the first thing I'm doing when I get her back.
So I just picked them up off me. I'm gonna try to reader. Good job, Stella. Good job, Stella.
I think they're very important. I've had previous pets that I got from the Humane Society, and they're beautiful pets, and they're treated well there until they go to their new forever home. So, yeah, I fully believe in the Humane Society and all the work they do.
She's right here. You can open the door for me. I can. Thank you. Here we go, Stella. We're on good. Oh, God, I see it. Come back. I promise you come back. Yeah, come on up. Can you get to the front of this truck, please? What do you have today?
Welcome home, Fancy.
Your gifts, your time, your effort, your bequests, and your planning all benefits our society and helping families stay together and pets stay safe in Windsor and Essex County. All of your donations stay 100% local, and they affect families here in the region. Now, let's talk about what that means for you. If you've been considering leaving a legacy, there's a couple of things that you need to put on your radar from a financial perspective and a legal perspective. So, we're going to kick things off with a gentleman that I've had a chance to work with for a number of years on AM 800 when I was back doing the radio thing. Mr. Josh Lane from Kasparloff and Associates, who's joining us on the show. And Josh, you are a financial advisor not only to so many in Windsor, Essex, but certainly from my family too. And I know this is something that you've talked about and something that we've talked about quite often in our travels. It's good to have you on tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Arms. Sound okay on your end?
Sounds absolutely incredible. And this
Perfect.
is an opportunity for, I guess, you to kind of talk about some of those financial benefits, right? As we bring up that presentation for the folks.
Absolutely. So again, thank you, Arms, for inviting me to come on here and help educate our potential donors and supporters of the Humane Society on some basic financial strategies tonight. And we'll do our best here. It's not the most exciting topic for some people on the financial side, but it's a passion of mine, and I'll do my best to keep it light and not too technical, and make sure that at least there's something that hopefully you take something away from this tonight. And the worst thing that can happen is you have more questions after tonight, or the best thing that can happen, and then you can go and ask your other professional advisors or other people, have further conversations around this. So Arms, thank you for the intro. And obviously, as you mentioned there, so I'm a partner in a local financial planning firm. For those who don't know, we have been in the city for quite a while, and myself and my business partner, Mike Skinner, are third generation owners now. And this is a topic that is definitely coming up a lot more frequently with our clients as they transition from retirement phase to the next phase, which would be estate planning. It's something we're having more and more conversations with, and something that I think that the pandemic has actually heightened this conversation even further as well. So we'll chat about that as well too as we get through the slide deck here, and I see you're pulling it up, so that's great. So we might as well kind of jump right into it from here, and this is a great starting point to the conversation. We are all in this pandemic together, and unfortunately, this global pandemic has negatively and created a lasting impact on not only charities, nonprofit organizations, small businesses, and it's tough. It's been a challenge for charitable-based organizations that rely on government programs and support, fundraising initiatives, local donors and sponsorships. For other organizations such as the Humane Society, events look completely different. People have had to reinvent and get more creative. So obviously this topic is so timely in terms of making sure that these organizations are able to continue to do the good work that they do in the communities. And there's a few ideas tonight that we'll maybe share that can potentially help these organizations in a great time of need, in terms of making sure that they're economically viable into the future. As I mentioned, we're having more and more of these conversations, and I think that the pandemic has given everyone an opportunity to kind of step back and really kind of reevaluate the importance of life, which has led to general conversations with their family, their friends, and their professional advisors like myself on, I'm thinking of leaving a gift, and how might I do that? And that's some of the questions that we're going to get into right here. So there's really two separate ways we can give. There's now, while you're living, while you can see the benefits of that gift and potentially impact the charity while you're living. And then there's later, which is obviously in final estate and through estate planning. And we'll kind of break down into a few of these categories on the next few slides here. But in general, donate now is donating cash, investments, insurance while you're living, versus later is simply naming the Windsor Essex Humane Society as a beneficiary of an insurance policy, an investment contract. And so when funds would be received at death by the charity, and your your final tax return would receive a benefit in terms of a charitable donation receipt. And then the other final point there on the give later scenario would be through your will and final will and estate, which I don't want to steal the thunder from Ryan. Ryan's going to get into a lot more details on that in a few slides. So let's drill down onto give now. So in terms of ways to give, the most simplest way is, you can give whatever you have available in terms of your surplus cash that you have on hand today. Maybe you have some maturing GICs that you don't think you're going to need for your day-to-day living expenses. There's many ways to give through monthly contributions, to kind of carve things up. If you just really want to give, even if it's something small, doing something on a monthly basis is, some clients do that as well. But we're talking about sort of more significant, like sizable type gifts. Obviously you really want to consult and get a good financial plan in place first to determine, maybe you don't need this extra bucket of money and you really want to do some good with it now. Another way to do this, to give now, is a lot of people have older, permanent, participating life policies that they've purchased 25, 30, 40 years ago. And a lot of our clients sometimes forget they have these policies, and they have accumulated a pretty significant cash value at times. And sometimes you don't actually, you're not making any further premium payments to the annual payments to keep the insurance going anymore. The participating life policy dividends are coming into the policy and paying for the premiums each year. So that's what we would call a paid up life insurance policy. We can take that policy and change the ownership of that policy to a charity. And the charity can be the recipient of that policy. And it works in two ways. You would get a receipt for that current value of that policy at the time of the gift, but the charity now has a choice to make, and they can continue that policy and realize the proceeds of that life insurance policy when you pass away down the road. Or they could technically cash that policy in and take the current value of that at a bit of a reduced rate, but maybe they have a greater need for those funds today. And there would be no tax implications once that policy's unloaded or collapsed, once it's in the charity's hands. So that's a nice strategy that a lot of times people have these policies kind of lying around that they've kind of forgotten about, that they may not necessarily be relying on for the future. So I find that that's a good one. Some examples of some of those policies I've seen a lot. Some people have these, Knights of Columbus policies, some old London Life policies hanging around out there. Those types of policies are the ones that I find are good scenarios for this. The last point on the slide here is you can donate in-kind investments or securities of multiple different types. So what I mean by that, I'm going to explain how that works a little bit later in a couple slides, but essentially what you're doing there is the same thing. Instead of cashing in an investment and taking the proceeds after you pay your taxes and cutting a check in cash to the charity, if the charity has a relationship with an investment person that can receive an existing investment in as is or in kind, you can donate that, and there's some tax benefits to doing it that way. And in return, you're going to get a nice receipt for the full value of that policy and save some tax. So we're going to go into some more details on that in a couple slides. So that covers the give now. So shifting to the give later, simply naming the Humane Society as a beneficiary of your insurance policy. So if you have one of those insurance policies I mentioned that is built up and you aren't paying premiums for it anymore, you can simply name them as the beneficiary. Or maybe you're still paying premiums for on the policy, and you just want to name the beneficiary, the Humane Society as a beneficiary. That's a nice, easy way to do it. It's good for your final estate. You're not going to get any tax benefits along the way while you're living, but you're going to get a significant one upon death, depending on the size of the policy. A really interesting way, which is the second point here, is you can actually name the Windsor-Essex Humane Society as a beneficiary of an investment as well. So an RSP, RIF, non-registered segregated fund contracts can be named. So those are under the insurance world, which allows you to name a beneficiary, which is completely, it stays outside of your will and goes directly to the charity. And then lastly, as I put there, you can name the Humane Society as a beneficiary in your final will and estate. And Ryan's going to chat about that one in a little bit as well. So some other things to consider. I mean, like any financial planning solution or strategy, there's all sorts of complex, creative tax saving strategies and financial strategies out there that you can implement. But they're not all things for all people. There's a lot of misinformation sometimes. So what I really recommend is that you really do your due diligence whenever a planned giving strategies suggested to you, or if someone's trying to sell you something, make sure you do your due diligence, because you really want this to be a big part of your overall financial plan, specifically your estate plan. And what your estate plan comes after you make sure you've got your retirement plan looked after, you've got enough cash flow to live your life for the rest of your days, and you've recognized that there's going to be some sizable assets that are going to be available for your estate. That's when you're going to want to start to look at something like this, so that you can include that as part of your overall financial plan. Make sure you fully understand the risks and the obligations of any longer term gifting strategy. And what I mean by that is, you as the donor have certain obligations and risks that you're potentially taking. And also the charity as the recipient, there's certain obligations and risks that they may be taking on as well. So you want to make sure both sides fully understand what they're signing up for, what they're committing to, and what potential pitfalls there might be on any strategy that you might implement. So just make sure you do your buyer beware. Make sure you do your due diligence. The last point, I can't stress this one enough. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax professional. I understand the tax world, but be aware of the ever-changing tax rules, because they change, and they change rapidly. And the government that is in power at the time may have different initiatives or programs they want to support, and things can change very quickly. The current situation we're in right now, there are quite a few tax planning strategies that are fully supported by the current regime, and there's great ways that we can gift money and do it tax efficiently. But just because it's a great strategy today doesn't mean it's a great strategy indefinitely. So you want to make sure you're consulting those professionals out there, especially a tax professional, with any type of creative strategy that you're employing.
I was just going to say too, Josh, I mean, that's a great piece of information too for people to realize, because I think when you take a look at what's possible and what you continue to see in regards to folks not knowing the rules, if they do have those changes as they come and go, it's always interesting to see, to have that advice and make sure you have that solid footing to make sure you can make those decisions with, an individual like yourself, or even having those people who know the tax rules as they may change, depending, like you said, on the level of government that's in power.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's integral, right? And at the time of doing it, you might make a plan today for your estate, and your estate doesn't happen for 25 years down the road. So we want to make sure we're implementing and updating and staying on top of things all along the way, right? So perfect. So yeah, let's jump into a couple case studies. I like case studies. I like it gives you real life examples, something you can relate to, or I guess maybe it works in your situation as well. The Give Now case study here is showing the in-kind or the as-is donation and the tax benefits that you might get from doing that type of strategy. So what we're looking at here is you're donating an investment that you've invested. It's done well for you. Your original investment was around $5,000. It's now grown to $10,000. So you have an embedded capital gain on that investment of around $5,000. So guess what? When you make money like that, there's taxes to pay. So in a strategy without any donation, you would sell the $10,000. You would pay capital gains tax, which about 50% of the capital gain is taxable. You, based on this current scenario, at a 45% tax rate, you would have about $1,100 of tax on that capital gain. If you did it that way, you sold off the investment and then you paid the tax and wrote the check to the charity, they would only receive around $8,800, give or take. And you would get a tax receipt for around, you would get a tax benefit for around $4,000 on your tax return. So you get about $4,000 back in taxes. If you donate that investment in kind, you donate the full value of the $10,000 to the charity. The charity receives the full $10,000. You receive a tax receipt for the full $10,000, which would generate $4,500 of tax savings. Also, as you note there, you don't pay any tax on the capital gain because you've donated it in kind. You haven't physically sold the shares. You've just donated it. So that's where you get that really powerful strategy by just changing a little bit of how you make that donation. You're giving the charity a sizable amount more in terms of the gift, and you're getting an extra $500, $600 of tax savings. So the charity wins, you win. Unfortunately, CRA loses, but that's okay in this strategy because we're trying to help the charity out in this case. So they're happy to support this. Even better, even more meaningful. If we give a gift of donating our registered retirement income funds or RSPs, the value of all of our registered plans on our final tax return get added into the final income for your year of death if you're the only spouse that's surviving. So let me say that again. So if there's two spouses and there is a sizable amount of investment in registered plans, if one on the first death, it rolls over tax-free to the spouse. Not an issue from a tax point of view. On the second death, however, the entire value of the registered plans are added to your income in the final year of death. If you have a $200,000 RIF when you pass away, at a 45% tax rate, that's $90,000 tax bill on your final tax return. So in this case, if there was no donation, $200,000 added to your income, $90,000 is taxable, or is the tax bill. $110,000 would be received by your beneficiaries. If we name a charity as a beneficiary of our RIF, your value is still $200,000. The donation amount is $200,000 because the charity receives the $200,000 directly, a check for $200,000 upon your passing. In turn, they give you a receipt for $200,000. The $200,000 wipes out the income on your final tax return, saving you $90,000 in taxes on your final estate, and the charity gets $200,000 instead of $110,000.
Wow.
Pretty powerful stuff, for sure. Lastly, I already kind of mentioned this a bit. make sure on any type of plan giving strategy, consult your financial planner, consult your accountant, your tax professional, your lawyer, your insurance provider. Make sure you include them in your plans. The last thing you want to do is make some changes and don't include these other professionals in this scenario, because one might conflict with another strategy or another's plan. So make sure you're always collaborating between your professionals and making sure you're staying on top of any current changes in the tax rules or strategies that are available out there.
Yeah, I was going to say too, Josh. I mean, this is why. I mean, from a holistic standpoint, if you're taking a look at investments, you're taking a look at where your money's going, and then if you factor in your kids or anybody who's surviving, anybody who's going to be taking care of your estate, it's kind of good to get all that mapped out now, and then work with folks like yourself to kind of say, this is where I want to impact when I'm gone. This is how it's going to. What is the best bang for my buck, essentially, right?
Absolutely. It's not a fun conversation for a lot of people to have, and it's one of those we call them ostrich type scenarios that play out. Sometimes people would rather just kind of stick their head in the sand, not really think about it right now, and just kind of set it aside. But it can be very you can make a meaningful impact, not only for a specific charity if you do some proper planning, but you can do it along the way as well too. You can get some fulfilling rewards out of that along the way while you're getting some tax savings. And then if you include the family in that discussion, guess what? It creates a legacy of giving, as you said in the opening of the conversation, the whole theme of this conversation. If you get your children and your grandchildren involved in your decision making around planned giving and charitable giving, guess what they're going to do? They're going to remember that. And they're going to do that with their family. And that's going to create, a better world for all of us, right, down the road.
And it really affects us at the Humane Society, too, to talk a little bit about that planning that goes into some of our bequests that we get, especially if we get the heads up that something may be coming or something has been planned for. And we'll talk a little bit about that just after we wrap up with our presentations here. So, Josh, thank you for your insight. Thank you for being just a great guy to talk to about this kind of stuff. And you're going to stick around for the Q&A right after this, right?
Absolutely. I'll be right here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Josh Lane from Kaspardloff and Associates. Great guy. Again, worked with him for decades and certainly knows what he's talking about. Ryan Soltz is joining us here on the show. Ryan, a pleasure to finally meet you face to face. I know I've worked sort of congruently with Soltz Law over the years, and huge fan of the work that you folks do, not only in the community, but for folks here in Windsor, Essex. So thank you so much for being a part of this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Arm. Pleasure to be here tonight and to speak a little bit to our audience about estate planning. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm a director at the Windsor Essex Community Foundation, and I am also heavily involved as a member of the Soltz Foundation. And I have a lot of experience reviewing grants from charities, and I know the considerations that people go through in making these types of decisions. There's a lot of thought that goes into this. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about that tonight. And then, for follow-up for people or Q&A, happy to stick around and answer some of those questions as well.
And I got to give a shout out to the chair in the background, right? Because that kind of leads us into what's going on here. You're an animal lover too, right? Yeah,
and that's my husky's chair over there. I never actually see him on it. I just see all the hair there. So I know it's his chair. He's not there right now. Maybe he'll join us at some point throughout this presentation.
So let's get right into it and talk about those ABCs there, Ryan.
Sure. So, if you want, just go to the next slide, Arms. I'll go right into it.
Let me cue this up here for 1 second. Sometimes
Sure.
It gets a mind of its own, so to speak. But, what's interesting, too, is when you have those particular ways to look at things and you try to get through having dogs and having dogs in those realms, like you have a husky. Like my parents had a husky for quite some time, and it was one of those things where it's like, you can always see the hair any way you go, so that they're around. But not just have the one husky. You've got the two husky. You've got the husky and this other gorgeous
Saint Bernard. So
Saint Bernard.
So not just hair, but drool as well. And I have to say, Arms, the cat was not very happy when she found out she was cut out of the slides. So we see a little bit of bias on your part towards dogs over cats. So, but that's okay. I'll give her some catnip later, and she'll be totally fine.
That's right. That's good. You got to keep the cats happy too, and you got to keep the folks that are wondering what's going on with your will in the know, right? Because there's a lot of questions when it comes to what exactly is a will.
Absolutely. And so tonight, what I've tried to do is really just provide a general overview of estate planning. I've formatted it as forms of questions for each slide. And really, we start with the basics, like what is a will? There might be some people in the audience who don't know. They might have an idea, but I'll go through that briefly for people. Who should be the executor? There's some misconceptions about what an executor is, let alone who should be the executor. So I want to clarify those things for people. How does the law treat animals and pets? How can I handle them in my will? I want to go over that for our audience as well, because that's probably in some people's mind. And then obviously as well, gifting to the Humane Society or another charity in my will. How does that work? And the last 3 slides are really specific points that honestly, they come up maybe once a week. I get these types of questions. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time, give some general information. Obviously, this is just general information, not giving specific advice to people. So if people have specific questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to me or their other professional and have a confidential discussion on those specific points. So first off, I'm just going to talk about what is a will. So I think most people know, I got to do a will because I need to figure out how to take care of my property. But it does a lot more than just how I take care of my property. It does a lot more than just say, these are the people I want to give my property to. A will also does other things, such as it appoints a person in charge of disposing your property. And that person is called the executor. We also use other terms that I'll explain later on: trustee, estate trustee, power of attorney. I'll clarify all that stuff for people in a few slides down. But the will explain who that person is. If there's multiple persons in charge of your property, you might have some clauses in there for how they make decisions. You're going to have clauses in the will that deal with what the executor can and cannot do. So you might have clauses in there about selling real estate, having discretion over the sale price of real estate, whether your trustee should receive compensation or not for acting. All of that is covered off in the will. And I think perhaps most important is a will can be used to set conditions on what we give to people. So if we don't do a will, the law is set up in a way that it already dictates how gifts are distributed to your survivors and who can be in charge. By doing a will, we're taking control and we're deciding those things and we're putting into place conditions. So to make a simple example, say my nephew is going to receive a gift of $1 million when I die. Do I want him to receive the $1 million at age 18? Or do I want him to receive the money in trust and have somebody oversee that money to make sure he doesn't just go out and buy a couple Lamborghinis and take a few people on a trip to Miami Beach? Those are the types of things that you cover off in the will. So the executor. The executor, we use this term interchangeably, sometimes with estate trustee and trustee. And these are actually different functions that get performed in a will, but usually we name the same person. So that's more of a, let's say, like a nuance there for lawyers, but it's important just so people understand that there are different meanings associated with those words. I'm just going to use them interchangeably for the purposes of our discussion today. One of the misconceptions that people have is that being a trustee is honorable. Like I have people come to my office who say, I'm going to appoint so-and-so as my trustee. And I say, well, have you spoken to them? No, they'll love doing this job. They'll be so happy for me to do this. And one of the biggest things to remember is that it's actually quite burdensome to be an executor. You're not just in charge of distributing people's assets and taking care of them, but you are also responsible to pay the taxes to the government that may be owing. If you make a mistake, the government could come after you personally for that money. You're responsible for dealing with disputes too, because sometimes people don't get along and they fight. So it can be a very burdensome job. I've seen executors come into my office with a bag full of a shopping bag filled with all their paperwork. And then I've had trustees come in with a USB stick and they have everything on a spreadsheet. So it's a lot of work. So consideration should be taken in choosing that person for sure. The other point I have here is that there's this misconception that the executor is going to make money. The executor usually doesn't make money. They're going to make a little bit of compensation for acting usually, but it's definitely not compensable to the amount of work they do. Being an executor is a full-time job, but you're not paid to work full-time for it. So the person that you choose has got to be somebody who's comfortable with these types of characteristics and these obligations. And ideally, it's somebody who's organized and would have the financial know-how, or at least the mindset to know when to get help. So how the law treats pets, I mean, I'm going to offend a lot of people who are listening in tonight, but the law really isn't kind to our animals. And it's really unfortunate because animals can't even speak and, come forward when there's a problem. Whereas, children or humans, we're able to communicate that way. Animals, the law says, are like a television or, a chair. They're dispensable. I'll never forget a case I had a couple years ago where the puppy had to go for surgery, and because the person bought the dog at the dog was from a puppy mill basically, and they had to get surgery. And the law really just says, well, you're compensated for the cost of a new dog. You're not compensated for your emotional loss or your damages. So my point is that our law is very insensitive, I could say. And in your will, you're basically dealing with a pet like you would deal with any other artwork, vehicles, things of that matter. That's really how the law treats those, unfortunately. That said, you can do things in your will to take care of your pet. For example, I've done clauses where people gift their pet to a specific person, and as an incentive, they offer a stipend to that person to take care of that animal for them. Usually, I try to have my clients think more long-term about their will, because a will speaks from death, and chances are you're going to survive your animal, because unfortunately, dogs and cats even, they don't live a very long time. Like my St. Bernard, the average lifespan of a St. Bernard is 7 years, and he's 3 in March. So chances are I'm going to survive him. So do I really need to put that in my will? Maybe, if it's really important, or maybe not. Either way, the law covers it off as just another part of your property. And if you don't put anything, the trustee will just make that decision. Another reason, Arms, why choosing a trustee who knows your wishes, who if you're a dog lover, is sensitive to your animals, good choice. So important slide and connects to Josh's presentation is how to gift to the Humane Society. So there's different types of gifts, and I do want to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I think it's really important for people to understand that there's a variety of different options that they can take for their will. And some of these can be while alive, or they can be after death. So the first one is you can leave a monetary gift. You can leave a residuary gift. And I should have included, you can do, as Josh said, an in-kind gift in your will. I'm not a huge fan of in-kind gifts in the will in general, because, as I said, the will speaks from death. So if I gift my Walt Disney stock to the Humane Society, well, maybe in 30 years I don't own that stock anymore, so my gift is void. So better to leave like a monetary amount, like $10,000 to the Humane Society, or 30% of the estate to the Humane Society. So monetary gift, obviously, like $10,000, that's a monetary gift, a legacy. Residuary gift would be like 30% of my estate to the Humane Society, for example. So that's the distinction there. I'm more, I recommend more to clients to do monetary gifts to charities. I find those are better because, first of all, they get paid right off the bat. And then it makes the executor's life easier because there's no obligation. They still have to account to the other beneficiaries, but usually a large charity, they're going to ask the executor for certain records, and maybe a layperson beneficiary or a family member is not going to request. So I do think that a monetary gift is better to the organization, and they get that right off the bat from the estate. Endowed fund. So Arms, I imagine, I apologize for my ignorance, but I imagine the Humane Society would do an endowment for people if they wanted to create a fund.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yes, we would.
Okay. So for our audience, what an endowed fund would be, where you gift, say, 50,000, 100,000 to the Humane Society, and they hold that money in perpetuity, basically, and it could be in your name or in somebody else's name. And they would basically, they would get to use the interest from that fund towards one of their projects. And then the capital just remains and helps the Humane Society build up a pool of funds to help fund projects, or maybe general expenses, which I know for a lot of charities, the general expenses are tough because people, they want to donate to the capital projects, but they don't necessarily want to donate to those other things, which are equally important. I mean, if you're not paying for your vet salaries, well, you can't offer a lot of those services, right? But it costs money to do that. So important aspect as well to do that. I do like endowed funds because you have lasting impact, and you don't have to wait to death to set up an endowed fund. You can set it up tomorrow, and you can contribute to it over time too, and really have that lasting impact for your community and for animals who, again, can't speak, who are dependent completely on us to take care of them. So I really like that as an option, and as I said, like, it's something you can start today. It's not something you need to wait for, but I mean, even cash donations can be made today, and people receive charity receipts for this year. And one other thing on that, I think, is that sometimes people think, well, I have a lot of money, I'm going to create my own foundation. Well, having been involved in a foundation, it's extremely burdensome. So sometimes it's easier just to use an endowed fund with a charity. Leave them in charge of the funds, and they'll get the expert accounting advice on how to do it. And then you don't run into this trying to do your own CRA filings and charity filings, things like that. Okay. Next slide I have is, why can't I attend my mom's meeting to do her will? So I do get calls sometimes where individuals ask to make meetings for example, their elderly parents, or they want to come in with their elderly parents. I usually am very skeptical of those types of calls, and I think most lawyers are trained to be so. So sometimes, if you call and do that, you might find us on the offensive a little bit or overly inquisitive. And the simple reason is because it's in everyone's interest that mom or dad get independent advice and aren't in any way, and there's no appearance that there's any type of influencing going on, because that can lead to trouble later on. So it's really important that parents, even if they're elderly, that they're, even if you think you're helping, and you are certainly helping, but it's always good to just, you can even bring the parents to the office, but they got to sit, that you got to sit in the waiting room. Parents come in, speak confidentially. We maintain the solicitor client confidentiality or privilege, as I've put in quotations there. And it's really the best way to do it, especially if there's a risk of siblings getting into a disagreement about things. So that's why I put, like, it avoids lawsuits. So that's really why I'm very hesitant, or even overly inquisitive when I get those types of calls. And then the next question that I have come up a lot is, I do have people who want to appoint executors out of province or even out of country. And unfortunately, you can't do that. It creates a bunch of different levels of issues. In the most practical sense, the biggest issue is the executor is responsible, for example, selling the house and rounding up all the assets in the house. It's a lot more expensive and difficult if you're in Calgary to fly to Windsor to empty a house and to sell the house than it would be if you're in Windsor or even Chatham coming to Windsor to empty the house and sell the house. So there's a practical aspect to that. And then the other two are, if you have to apply for probate, which I briefly will talk about because that's kind of a big subject on its own. The court's looking for an executor who is resident in Ontario. If the executor is non-resident, they might ultimately refuse the executor altogether, or they could require what's called a bond. So that's just basically an insurance that's taken out 3 times the value of the estate. So it can be quite a bit of money, stating to the government that you will cover any expenses or debts associated with the estate. So that can be avoided by choosing somebody local or within the same province. And then the last question here is about probate tax. It's also called estate administration tax. So probate is when you bring the will, in layman's terms, you bring the will to court and you get the will validated by the court as the last will and testament of the deceased. When you do that, the province says you got to pay tax. It's called probate tax, probate fees, estate administration tax. These are all basically synonyms for the same thing. What it is it's 1.5% of the value of the estate above $50,000. There are exceptions for, like, if you have a house with a mortgage on it. There are exceptions for when you need probate. But my point is just that in general, I think a lot of people try to avoid this tax, and I don't necessarily always think it's a bad thing, because sending the will to court is really just having the court stamp the will and say, this is the executor. They're legally entitled to act. Do you need to do that? No, not always, but sometimes it's good to have that process in place. And they say the 2 certainties, death and taxes. I mean, it's 1.5% of tax, and it allows you, if you don't hold things jointly and you have to pay the tax at the end, it allows you a degree of autonomy right to the end. So I mean, my point is just, everyone's gung ho to avoid it, but sometimes it's not a bad thing.
Well, one thing that I wanted to talk about too, Ryan, just before we wrap up, and that was great information too for our audience. This screen here, just showing some information, getting some emails as we continue to chat here live, and some emails prior to us going live tonight about how do we contact somebody. Now, folks are maybe have those questions when it has to come to what happens with us at the Humane Society, and really how your gifts and your bequests will benefit our organization through the next several years, well into the next decade, certainly you can give us a call or email me directly. And then Joshua's email and information up on the screen as well. And Ryan's information is up on the screen as well for folks to, of course, absorb. And we'll post that in the comments after we're done the live stream as well. But now it's time to ask the speakers our question and answer period on legacy giving, on all the information that was given by Josh and Ryan today. And certainly from a perspective, we were talking a little bit about, how this benefits everyone, how this can benefit individuals, and as they're thinking about, how to leave that lasting impact. Ryan said, you know, uh, you really want to get those operating costs right, and we showed you some of that footage about some of our staff working on the weekends to try to facilitate where the need is. And again, our executive director Melanie Coulter, who does just an incredible job day in and day out running our organization, really has a mandate, and certainly Dr. Kayla, our vet, also to get us out into the community and go where the need is, which I think is so crucial in this day and age. And let's go to some Facebook Live comments. We'll get to some emails here. They're rolling in for our guests. We've got Ryan Soltz and Josh Lane here with us. I'll do my best to answer from a Humane Society perspective. Let's go to Laurel, who's joining us on the Facebook live stream. She goes, I have no spouse, and my will was done many years ago. I want to change it and go over it. Is there a cost to that? Because I'm thinking about putting the Humane Society in the will, thus the change. Great question. Josh, did you want to take that?
I'll let Ryan take that one.
Yeah, Ryan, take that one. I apologize.
Yeah.
I would definitely suggest that Laurel talk to whoever her trusted advisor is. I think there might be some need to have that looked at. And even if changes aren't made, it's definitely worth the discussion to get some information. In terms of costs, it really depends. I mean, you can do it. It depends on what's involved in the will. It could be as simple as paying $350 for a will, or it could be a very complex will with multiple changes, which could result in higher fees. I mean, I've seen them across the board. So I've seen bills for $350, but I've also seen bills up into the thousands. So it really depends what's involved. Do you own a company? Do you have multiple investments? Do you want to set up an endowed fund in your will? There's all kinds of those things. So that's why it's best just to, have a chat with whoever your advisor is, and they can help you sort through that.
Yeah, Laurel, thank you so much for the comment. We appreciate that. And certainly if you want to give Ryan a shout, and again, we'll put up in the link as well. Let's go to a couple of emails here from individuals this before the show started. This one is actually coming in from the Lakeshore area. We received this over the course of the weekend. Janice in Lakeshore are wondering, will my estate receive a tax receipt for the value of a gift? Janice, thank you so much for sending that in over the course of the weekend again. Anybody want to take this? Josh, Brian?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, sure. So the short answer is yes. Depending on how it's given, if it's named through the beneficiary designation of a contract, like an insurance policy or an investment, obviously the value at the time of death would be received by the charity, and the charity would issue a tax receipt for that. If it's through the will, the same thing applies. It's just the value, depending on how you've named that gift, whether, like Ryan mentioned earlier, whether it's a residual amount or a fixed amount in terms of monetary, the charitable receipt may vary depending on how you provided that gift. So yes, the short answer is your beneficiary, your final estate will receive a tax receipt. And one good thing is on final tax returns, you can use the receipt up to 100% of your income to offset the tax bill on your final return. And based on today's tax rules, but while you're living, you can only go up to 75% of your net income. So there is a bit of a bump up on your final estate return to use a larger amount on your final tax return.
Josh, thank you so much. And Janice, thanks for the email. Another email to go here as we continue our live stream. Folks, you can comment in the Facebook feed. We'll get to a few of those with our guests here on the show, Ryan Soltz and Josh Lane, as we continue to talk about how you can impact us here at the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society and allow us to continue with some exciting projects and, again, as Ryan said, those operating costs that continue through the next several years. This email coming from the tomato capital of Canada over the course of the last 24 hours, Bill in Leamington says, hey, can I actually specify how my gift is going to be used within the organization I give to? Bill, thanks so much for that. I certainly, from a Humane Society perspective, then we've dealt with that several times since I've been a part of the team in April. Folks have been so generous enough to give us again bequests in their will, and us to take a look at that to see where exactly these particular large sums are going to go, as they've been saying. But is this something that that you run into, Ryan, as well on your end of things?
Yeah, I think in general that's it's a great idea when you want to give a specific gift to call up the organization and really have that type of discussion with them from the get-go, so that they understand what your wishes are, and they can ensure you that they can meet those desires. I mean, I'm sure most charities are in desperate need of the funding, because there's always a hole there as a charity that needs to be filled, and there's always greater need than there are finances for. But so my point is, they will probably try to meet your whatever your needs and desires are. But it's always easier if you do that from the get-go, so then it's not just a surprise. I've left you 500 grand in my will, and you can only use the money for veterinary services at your organization. Having that discussion is just easier. Programs could be developed. You have more say that way too. So I don't see why you wouldn't proceed that way and just have that open discussion with somebody at the Humane Society.
And it allows us, like you said, Ryan, to start to plan and to take a look at, we had one, actually, when I first came on board in April, which was, it just shows how generous, and I know you both know Windsor-Essex County is, but this particular individual who wanted to remain anonymous really wanted to push some of our feral barn cat programs about getting these cats, keeping them on sort of those rural properties and what that would entail. So we had to make sure that, again, a portion of the donation would go towards that particular program, which was great, because it's something that we want to continue to fund and make sure that we have the revenue stream for as well. Back to Facebook Live comments here. Our good friend John Casey from the Windsor-Essex Therapeutic Riding Association. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another charity seeing some value in what we're doing tonight. John says, hey, you know what? Can a business hold a title on an endowment fund that is set up for a charity? And is there any change in receipting for a charity receiving funds through that endowment?
That's a good one. Anyone want to grab that one? Can a business hold
the title on endowment fund that is set up for a charity? So can a business hold that actual title that the endowment fund has been set up for? Is there any change in receipting for a charity receiving funds through the endowment?
Yeah, I don't think that there's any restriction on who can donate to a charitable organization, Arms. With respect to holding a fund, can a business hold a fund within an endowment fund within that charity? I'm pretty sure I've seen that in the past. Now, I haven't seen that done in a will, for example. I guess it may be possible, but I could foresee several, legal issues with setting it up that way. But I think in theory, it could be possible to do that. I'm just thinking from the community foundation that we do have some funds held by companies there. So I think that answers the first part of that question. With respect to the second part, I'm not an expert in how receipting works. That to me seems to be more specialized type of question. I don't know if maybe in your office, Arms, you have somebody who would be a better question to ask, who deals with that, or even an accountant who's specialized in doing these types of filings and issuing the receipts. And as I said, like I'm not an expert on the Income Tax Act, but I believe a corporation is also considered a taxpayer, just like an individual. So some of the rules may be synchronized in that respect.
Yeah, I was just going to make that comment, just saying in general for just general receipted donations, there's nothing wrong with a corporation cutting a check for a gift. So I don't see why they would be not allowed to hold an endowment fund within that like that structure, same structure as well. But yeah, I'm no expert on tax structure per se. That would definitely be a really good question for the accountant of the corporation, and maybe, like you said, Ryan, maybe someone a bit more specialized within the charity itself on the receiving side.
Yeah, and it also depends too on what you're receiving in exchange for that gift. I know, like, there's specific rules about, they call it advantages. So am I just donating and getting nothing in exchange, or am I getting some type of fanfare or recognition for this? And is that recognition subtracted from whatever the receipt value is I'm receiving? That's where it gets more complicated.
Well, thank you so much for answering that. And hey, we appreciate the chat, John, as well. I know certainly we have our finance department at the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society. Dana leads the team there, and she's a wealth of information when it comes to those particulars in terms of receipting as well. So Rose is saying, hey, thank you so much for the great information. We appreciate it. Laura commenting on the feed too, saying this is a great idea. And Linda saying, hey, am I able to watch a repeat of this presentation at another time? Yes. For those of you who weren't able to sit through the live broadcast this evening, or you're looking to maybe dive in a little bit deeper, or even listen to this via podcast, the actual information will be posted on our YouTube channel this weekend, and the rebroadcast will put up on our Facebook page for people to see as well. Let's go back to the emails that we received over the last little bit here. This one is coming into us from our friend Betty in Windsor. So we got this a few days ago, and she says, wondering a little bit about how you determine if the property I'd like to donate is going to be helpful to your charity. So that's a great question too, because I know that's something that, we are looking at and we see often come through our particular realm of fundraising as well. So I'd assume at that point, right, there would be some sort of, appraiser, right? In terms of that would be involved in that sense if somebody's actually donating property.
Yeah, I mean, if she means in terms of property could mean a lot of different things, right? So if it's property as in physical property, obviously, yeah, you would need some legal and tax advice on how to properly value that and how it could potentially be beneficial to the charity or not. If she's talking about just in general, property in general, meaning, cash investments, any type of gifting or of their property upon passing, for example. Again, going back to our conversations we've had earlier, I think some collaboration with the charity you're looking to support is never a bad thing. As you mentioned, Arms, and I think Ryan mentioned as well, it's never a bad thing to consult with the charity that you're looking to leave a legacy with, and find out what they do need, right? And maybe there is other ways that you can gift that or make that gift through other means in your personal plans, and or maybe something that there is something that of value to that charity for whatever property that is that they are gifting.
And I love what you said there, Josh, too, about just finding out the needs too. I mean, it's even a discussion, and having those conversations with our potential donors and donor base and organizations and businesses who are really looking to make an impact and work with us down the road. We have some exciting things that are on the horizon, and there's some great work that's being done at the Humane Society, and it starts with a phone call. So many people are, myself included, are big fans of this digital age, but sometimes it's that 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes you can carve out on the telephone and have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, this is what's happening at the Humane Society. This is how can I help? What can we do to help? Are there ways to help in whatever way we're able to do? And we're able to sort of paint a picture of what our current state is and where we'd like to be in the next 5 to 10 years as well. Mm-hmm. We're just going back to some of the Facebook Live comments. This is great. We're getting them rolling in here. We're talking to Ryan Soltz and Josh Lane, two folks that were helping us kind of launch our legacy promotion and legacy giving here at the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society. Laurel, back with another question. She goes, is there an actual minimum to an endowment, or how much is needed for that?
I can talk a little bit about that, Arms. I don't know the specific policy at the Humane Society for what size is needed to start an endowment fund. But if you look at the banks, they offer in these types of funds, as do like the community foundation, for example, they offer them, and the university would as well. Generally speaking, that's about $20,000. So, I mean, we're seeing a crazy increase in real estate property right now. A lot of people, that's going to be their major asset. And for, baby boomers thinking about the future, an endowed fund of $20,000, if your house has just doubled in value in 2 years, is probably not a huge amount of money, but is for your estate to cover. But it's a huge difference to whatever organization you decide to contribute to. And again, like the nice thing about endowed fund is that it's there in perpetuity, so other family members can contribute, and it can just grow over time.
Thank you so much for that, Ryan, and thanks, Laura, for continuing the conversation here. And just a quick mention for the woman who sort of spurred this, and again, me coming on board to the Humane Society back in April and saying, okay, how can we sort of illuminate what we do and some of the unique ways and ways people may not think about giving to the Humane Society or organizations as a whole. Um, Mary Watts was just a fantastic woman, and she was somebody that we are internally grateful for at the Humane Society as well. And Leslie joining the feed, she's saying, I had the pleasure of knowing Mary. She's such a lovely, gracious lady who only wanted happiness for everyone she met. And it's really unique too, talking to a lot of folks who knew her, knew of her legacy, knew of her personality, including some of the nurses who took care of her in her final days. It's just an incredible thing to see, and I'm sure from both ends of the spectrum, certainly Josh from your end and Ryan at your end as well, from the legal side and the financial side, when you get to kind of know your clients, you get to know the people who are coming to you, and they know that they really want to make that impact. That must be very satisfying for both of you to say, hey, there's certain things that these people care about, and we're going to make sure that this resonates well into the next several years, after they've gone, right? I mean, it's really about that. I hate to use the term again, but that lasting legacy, and you must see that all the time, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually something that should be brought to people's attention, because a lot of people, it doesn't necessarily cross their mind until you bring it up, and then when you bring it up, of course, it's like, wow, yeah, that's a great idea, and this is a great opportunity to spread the word of that opportunity, and that it's really not just for, for lack of better phrase, a bunch of rich people. You can also be, middle class gifting and make a tremendous difference. And I mean, just, Mary's donation, like look at the legacy, like we're talking about her tonight. So, I mean, just a perfect example of lasting legacy is that donation right there.
Yeah. And Josh, from your angle too, I know like when we hooked up in terms of, getting, Kasparloff and Associates involved with the Humane Society, I know you were saying that you had clients that continue to, give to so many charitable organizations here in the Windsor Essex area. But then you said, it's funny you called Arms, because I've had a few people actually, want to look into giving to the Humane Society too. So from a financial standpoint, that must be very satisfying for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that add the human element to what we do. We talk in numbers and spreadsheets and look at projections and all that. And sometimes it can get a little bit technical and cold. And this really brings back the human element of what we do and why I do what I do. I mean, I genuinely enjoy, helping people solve any financial problems that they have. And this isn't necessarily a problem, but it's sometimes a problem, or there's a barrier to how do they achieve what they're trying to achieve. And, just bringing together some basic, knowledge and educating them on some of the options they have available out there to do this. It's extremely rewarding. Absolutely. And it creates a legacy, not only for the charities, but also, like Ryan was saying, for their families as well, too. And it creates a lasting legacy throughout the generations that we get to help manage their finances for.
Well, Ryan, Josh, thank you for spending some time with me tonight. I really appreciate it. I know our folks in our audience watching it live appreciate it. To the folks that we will get to some of your emails, again, we'll put that information for both Ryan and Josh in the feed, and watch for the rebroadcast again on our YouTube channel. But to both of you, I think you both are fantastic individuals, and I just want to say on behalf of everyone at the Society and the animals as well, thank you for making some time with us tonight. We all appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Arms.
Thank you very much. Josh Lane from Chris Bardloff and Associates, and Ryan Soltz from Soltz Law joining us here on the program, and just great guys to deal with, and fantastic information from them in regards to what you can expect for legacy planning. So if you've thought about how you can impact us at the Humane Society and how your gift really resonates in the future for us, check out the website windsorhumane.org/plan giving, and know that a legacy gift will essentially help us secure a future for the lost, abandoned, injured, and mistreated animals here in the Windsor-Essex County area. It really is a lasting gift for the future of our community, and it starts with a phone call. And you may be saying, hey, listen, I'd love to give the Humane Society. I want to have that conversation. You can call me or you can email me directly anytime, and we can have that conversation one-on-one. Development@windsorhumane.org. Thank you so much for participating in tonight's live broadcast. Again, the rebroadcast will be up on our YouTube channel, and we'd love to hear from you at the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society about all the work that we've been doing and all the work we want to continue to do in the next decade and beyond. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.